let's start with the governors in southern Nigeria, who have demanded that Nigeria's presidency should come to the south in 2023. The governors rose from a meeting in Lagos on Monday where they reviewed the state of the nation, especially the security situation, anti-open grazing law in all member states. They also reiterated their demand for state police. Meanwhile, the northern leaders have reacted with mixed feelings to the communique of the meeting while giving conditions for the South to consider.
The Southern Governors Forum, at the end of its meeting held today, reviewed the situation in the country and focused on the current security situation, constitutional amendments, and petroleum industry bill. The forum reviewed the security situation in the country and commended the security operatives for their relentless efforts in restoring security and safety. We commiserate with families and loved ones who have fallen in the line of duty. The forum re-emphasized the need for state police. The forum set a timeline of Wednesday, the 1st of September 2021 for the promulgation of the anti-grazing law in all its member states.
Well, the governors, you recall, they first met on May 11, the 17 governors of the southern states of Nigeria. They called their 10-point communique from Asaba. They called it the Asaba Accord. Now, on Monday, June 5, they met again in Lagos, and they came away from the meeting with what they called the Lagos Declaration, including one, the demand that in 2023, it will only be in line with the principles of fairness, justice, and equity, and fair play if the presidency comes back to the southern part of Nigeria. They argued that whenever there's going to be any security operation in any of the states in the south, the governors should be informed. They should be carried along. I guess they were referring to a recent incident in Ibadan, Oyo State, without specifically drawing attention to that. But they are saying that the governors should be notified. 3, they are also demanding that the 13% profit to be allocated to frontier basins under the proposed petroleum industry bill is unacceptable to them. They also concluded that the 3% for host communities is also too small. They are insisting that should be increased. Now, again, they are also insisting that member states should, by September 1, promulgate the anti-open grazing law. And already in Ogun State, 3 days ago, the State House of Assembly has, complied with that resolution, and Ogun State will seem to be, the first state after that June 5 Lagos Declaration that has gone ahead to come up with that anti-open grazing law, under which the legislature in Ogun State is proposing a 3-year jail term without the option of fine, and then the forfeiture of the head of cattle or livestock if anybody engages in open grazing in any part of the state, apart from provided cattle ranches within the state. So these are some of the issues, and those issues have been very controversial, particularly the position on rotational presidency, the position on 3% host trust fund for host communities, and also the position that had been taken with regard to the frontier basins. And the reaction has come from, stakeholders in the north, also from the Northern Elders Forum, also from the coalition of northern groups who insist that this is a gang-up against the north. Professor Akintenewa, let me start with you. Is this a gang-up against the north? And is it true that it is unconstitutional to ask for, zoning and rotation?
On the first observation, is it a gang up? I will provide an answer to it to say, let it be a gang up. Absolutely nothing is wrong in ganging up against what is not tenable, what is not logically acceptable. You see, when you put all the requests, the position of the southern governors, they actually encourage a shift from the current dictatorship at the center. They are all aimed at sending messages to all others that this is the time for true federalism. Now, they all reflect, elements of true federalism. Take it one by one. For instance, if the southern governors say, inform us, keep us abreast of any intervention in our state, is simply trying to say, look, the governor is the chief executive of the state. Now, the president is a commander-in-chief, but you can only act as commander-in-chief through the state commanders-in-chief. That is one good point. If, for instance, the governors are saying, please, they are against the 3% allocated for trust funds, that one is perfectly in order. We only need to go back even to the time of Yar'Adua, who proposed 10%. 10%. Now it was the same President Muhammadu Buhari that reduced the percentage from 10 to 2.5%. Before, we are now talking about reduction from 5 to 3. Now, if the governors are drawing attention to this, there is absolutely nothing wrong in ganging up against what is not good. Additionally, take the issue of open grazing. Open grazing, please, for God's sake, why would you expect an elected president to be invoking a gazette that was adopted during the First Republic now for purposes of application in contemporary Nigeria, when already by 1976 a land use decree had overtaken that? That is not consistent with the principle of lex posteriori, deroga lex anteriori. When you have two laws on the same issue, the most current necessarily derogates the existing one. So in this case, the governors are saying, look, it is the governors that have the right to control land, to hold it in trust on behalf of the people. Many are the other issues. If you take them one by one, I wouldn't find anything wrong. It's not a gang up. And now, when you now say, is it constitutionally right? In this particular case, please, there is a misconception of what constitutes divisibility and dissolubility of Nigeria constitutionally. We need to ask ourselves, we need to begin to rethink what makes Nigeria indivisible. Is it because it is clearly stated in the Constitution on the pages of the newspaper?
Section 2, subsection 1.
Yes, I am aware. Now, if it is because it is stated there, does that one reflect the situation and reality in global politics? It does not.
Well, Prof,
the issue now is...
At that point, let me bring in
okay.
Dr. Nwaneri. Yes, Dr. Nwaneri, over to you.
So, how do you approach this question? The question of gang up, whether or not the southern governors ganged up. Well, I'm not a politician, but from what I know about politics, you're very, very free to gang up. There's nothing wrong with ganging up. There's nothing wrong with the counter gang up as well, because all of a sudden, the politicians, the governors are acting as if this notion we have of North-South, in their actions, in their utterances, it's embarrassingly, they don't come across as people that are running politics. There's something almost petty about it. Like, you've done me, me too, I will do you back. I don't know if we're going to make progress in that direction. Then with regards to this understanding that I've been hearing about rotational presidency, two mistakes. The first one is, if you were serious and committed about it as a society, we should have enshrined it somewhere. We should write it into law. In politics in Nigeria, historically, I don't know if I would believe anybody's gentleman's agreement, because there's nothing holding anybody to deviating from it. There's no legal, nothing. Nobody tied it up. It was like, oh, okay, on a don't do na turn, not my turn. It doesn't work that way. I feel that if we were committed to it, we really should have put it into law. And I will suggest that we'll find a way to write it into law. 6 geopolitical zones, and the presidency is rotated. Now, it seems as if certain groups, for whatever reason, have decided that this understanding, unwritten understanding that we had, they're going to go back on it. I don't know if there's much option legally for anybody who feels that the presidency should come from their area. I don't know what options are open to them, right? Then, so I will suggest that in future we find a way to enshrine this legally. Now, with regards to the restructuring of NNPC, very few people are satisfied with the way NNPC runs, and NNPC has been running historically. We're also very, we have preconceived notions, and we have, sentiments, moods. We feel that everybody is out to do us in. Now, I wonder how many people have actually read this bill.
Well,
you want to stop me
Dr.
here?
Wanere, if you could just hold your thoughts. We need to go on a short break.
Okay.
When we return, the conversation will continue. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Dr. Andrew Duwan, public policy consultant and visiting scholar, Loyola University, Chicago in the United States, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, before that conversation with Alhaji Gali Nahaba, former Speaker of the House of Reps, Dr. Wanere, you were talking about the same issue, the June 5 Lagos Declaration by Southern governors. And then, of course, we've had this conversation with him also, and he raised quite a number of issues. So I'd like to come back to you.
So I agree with him on certain points. The points he made about rotational presidency leading to mediocrity and lack of democracy. So, and then the point he made as well about how, look, at the end of the day, APC, PDP, pick your candidates, or any party that is out there, pick up your candidates and submit them to Nigerians to vote for them. Take the risk, right? That is what democracy is about. So I do agree with him. The idea of tenure in Nigeria, the idea of it is my turn, the idea of not checking content. I remember what he said about the Kaduna bypass. I have the privilege of having done my undergraduate at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. And he's right about the Kaduna bypass. So you end up picking somebody from your village. What guarantee do you have that it is going to help you in any way, one way or another, right? So I agree with him on that, on those points. Now, he also said something about how open grazing. You remember you said Ogun State has implemented, right?
Yeah, the House of Assembly.
The House of Assembly
has
passed a law. So, however, if you look at that bill, if you look at the law itself, you will see that there's a little clause that says, yes, we've banned open grazing. Yes, you're going to go to jail. However, you can only graze in places where you are permitted to. In other words, they preempted what Alhaji Naba was saying, which is that before you ban something, you need to create alternatives. So it seems as if alternatives have been created. Now, what I don't understand, and I agree with him about politicization of issues, Now, an entire state house will not indiscriminately throw people out of their state. It doesn't work that way, right? And Ogun State has shown that it doesn't work that way. They have made alternatives. They have made alternative arrangements. The question now is in the implementation. And then he talked about marginalization. I like what he said about banditry, about how at the end of the day, where he said that a lot of people that are bandits today are actually people that have been marginalized. They're actually people that have been thrown out or left out of state social services and provision. Check it well, they're not educated. Check, they're hungry, right? I am not endorsing crime. I am simply saying that he said something that I'm going to quote, and that is, you cannot defeat insecurity with guns. Where we are now, it is not about arms and ammunition. It is about Nigeria figuring out what we did wrong. How do we end up in a situation where we have this kind of loss of control? He didn't say it here, but remember he got into trouble recently because he said something about how the state has become a failed state. Remember?
That was in 2020.
Yes,
August 2020.
August 2020. He said something about how the current administration, maybe I shouldn't be bringing it up. He said the current administration has managed the country in a way that has become a failed state. But you don't get to that point in 2, 3, 4 years. So I like what he's saying because I agree with that position as well. Then the last thing I'm going to add is about internal democracy. He talked about internal democracy. The difference between real democracy and what we're practicing is we're practicing representative democracy. And we really should go back to the drawing board because, as he said, yes, the question about state power. He said that the states are run like fiefdoms, where you have to suck up to the governor to get any position. It is not based on merit. So my question to people that are looking for more power for the states, how do we ensure that we as a people do not end up with governors how do we ensure that this situation does not further worsen? In my state where I come from, the former governor, for 8 years, we didn't have local government chairpersons. We didn't. There were no elections held. So how do we guarantee that this power that we're struggling for the states, I am in no way saying we should not, but I'm saying that while we're agitating for it, something he said worries me because the sheer power, the way the governors execute power without control, means that if they get more power, like state police, what do we do? If we multiply the power they have now by 10, what happens? At that point, I will end.
Well, yes, at that point, let me bring in Yemi Adamolekun. Yemi Adamolekun, yes, good to see you.
Good
well,
to see
your
you,
take on the Lagos Declaration and some of the points made by Alhaji Naaba on rotational presidency, security in the country, how to deal with poverty, and all of those issues.
Thank you. I mean, again, as we'll talk about Sunday and Sunday, Nigeria's political elites are willing to take responsibility for where we are and then responsibility for how we get out of it. We will continue to analyze and analyze and analyze. Alhaji Naaba said quite a number of things that I disagree with. That quite strong is the issue of the devolution of powers. That this whole race to be president, not it's because the position of president is widely considered to be powerful, the most powerful in a democracy, presidency, just in terms of the powers that the president has. And he makes the case that if we devolved powers, then this whole race to the center would be less attractive. And I completely agree with that. And within the context of sort of larger discussion around Nigeria, around equity, around justice, around fairness, that we devolve power so it's not as concentrated, I think says a lot. Now Dr. Nwaneri then says, how do we ensure that when the state governors now have this power, that they don't abuse it as they've abused what they already have? But I believe it's still the same fundamental issue that we keep coming back to. Until citizens know their rights and their responsibilities, and engaging from legislators to the presidential or unitary structure that we have now, when everybody is shouting Buhari's name, we'll just start shouting your governor's name and paying attention. will then have to, and I think for me, in a sense, it almost makes it slightly easier. Well, there are two things. Focusing on Abuja can be easier because all of us are talking about Abuja, so the noise is amplified. Now, when we're talking about Lagos, and for those in Lagos, I mean, I'm from Ondo, so okay, Professor Akintayewa and I will be talking about the same thing. Dr. Nwaneri will be talking about a different state. You, Dr. Abati, will be talking about state. We lose the amplification of a national issue, but it allows us to focus a bit more granularly and spotlight our state governors and demand local government elections, for example. So we have local government chairmen that we can hold accountable. But I think it's a very important conversation that we need to have. And again, it helps us to have this conversation around Nigeria, around what are the terms of us being together as a country? What does it look like? How are we sharing resources? Is it because a pipe goes through my state, I suddenly should be getting the same derivation as a state where the resource is actually under their ground? And we're forced to have this conversation because power is devolved. So on that one, I agree with Alhaji Naba 100%. Now, you spoke about the politics of proximity, this whole notion that if the president is from my state or from my area, we suddenly we benefit or we do better. And history is clear. I keep saying I'm going to do the research. I just haven't had time. From Obasanjo to Jonathan to Buhari, the data is there. The fact that they were from those regions didn't mean anything. It didn't improve welfare for anybody. It's not that infrastructure came there any more so than it went to any other part of the country. But the mindset is there, and it'll take a lot to unpack that for a lot of Nigerians. One thing, importantly, that I disagreed with Alhaji Naba on is this issue of insecurity. Again, like a lot of Northerners tend to talk about when they're talking about banditry, he again tied it to the issue of poverty and says that almost like, oh, yes, they are forced into kidnapping and banditry because there's poverty in the land. Okay, I'm sorry. Kaduna is not the only state that has poor people. Why is it only in Kaduna that they're kidnapping people? Why is it only in Zamfara? Why are babies and toddlers, as you rightly said, an area of interest, and we want to dismiss it by saying that because people are poor, they're criminals, period. And if we don't discuss these issues in those terms, we continue to make excuses. And that's why people, again, talk about the treatment for a Kanu and an Igbo different from the language we want to use for bandits and kidnappers and Boko Haram while we're at it. So again, something to keep in mind. And then lastly, he I think two things, sorry. One, he talked about the National Assembly. I think last week we had I forget who it was that spoke about it being possible that people in the National Assembly can forge documents and manipulate bills. And it says a lot. And I think National Assembly members that watch this show should actually pay attention. How easily members of the same National Assembly, former or current, can say, oh yes, it's very possible. We forge documents, we manipulate things, it can happen. And so when Nigerians get upset with the National Assembly, they should understand the context because they themselves are admitting that they are crooks. So you can't be upset with Nigerians. Lastly, the whole issue about open grazing and why governments or state governors in the South should provide alternatives. I'm sorry, the last time I checked, grazing, herding cattle was a business. It's a private business. So I'm not quite sure why Southern governors, they haven't provided alternatives to people who bake bread, to people who are hairdressers. They just say you cannot have your cattle roaming across our grounds. If you want to set up a ranch, if you want, you can. But so I don't understand this rationale of we must discuss with them because we're saying this mode of doing your business is detrimental to lives and farms and livelihoods. So the governor should now sit with business owners who make profits from this business, who don't pay tax most likely, to now discuss what is convenient for them. I don't understand that.
Yemi, on that note, let me go quickly to Prof. Well,
I and Yemi are not geopolitically from Ondo State only, but we belong to the same school of thought because I do not agree with Naba for more than, in fact, most of his submissions. Let me begin with the few aspects that I agree with him. He said that anything is possible, anything goes in Nigeria. Senator Sani told us either last Sunday or the previous Sunday that anything goes in Nigeria. What does that really mean for us? That means Nigeria is a lawless country. When you say anything is possible, then lawmakers themselves, if they have become professional crooks, That means that you cannot, on the one hand, be talking about anti-corruption when those who are making the laws on corruption themselves are engaged in that. He did say that what the Igbo people, the Southeast, is looking for is not presidency, but development. I disagree with him. You see, the issue is that, I will just put it this way. When you are in power, for instance, like President Muhammadu Buhari is in power, why is it that he's engaging in nepotism day in, day out, and his attention is drawn to it, and he doesn't care? So in this case, when we are talking about saying you need all this, please, regionally or otherwise, they should give Igbo people the opportunity to have their own candidate there.
Well, on that note, Professor Akinterewa, we take another short break here on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I still have in the studio Professor Bola Akinterewa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Dr. Andrew Duwan, public policy consultant and visiting scholar at Loyola University, Chicago in the U.S. And Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Let's take our next topic of the day. Presidential media aide Lauretta Onochie has denied being a member of the All Progressives Congress, APC, during a screening. This was a position before the Senate Committee on the Independent National Electoral Commission, which is considering a nomination for the position of INEC National Commissioner. Meanwhile, more documents are coming to the public domain suggesting that Lauretta Onochie may have lied to the Senate about her resignation from active politics. Arise political editor Sumna Sambo reports.
She should take an oath because it will help us in our decision.
Lauretta Onochie's nomination has received wide condemnation from the public over her alleged partisanship and membership of the governing All Progressives Congress, thereby leading to tons of petitions against her to the National Assembly. But at this screening before the Senate Committee on INEC, Onochie categorically denied any membership of the APC and debunked any partisanship despite petitions against her before the committee.
Are you a member of any political party as present?
I am not. Since 2019, when President Muhammadu Buhari won his second term, I have removed myself from anything political, not even anticipating that I will be here today defending my nomination to INEC. It was never in my, I never envisaged it, but here I am.
But some senators will take none of that, as they insisted that Onochie must be put on oath before the public can believe her. This led to huge disagreements among the lawmakers.
My only request, sir, will be that Madam Onochie be placed on oath to repeat what she said as to whether or not she's a member of a political party.
He will only put somebody on oath in a committee if we were having if there was there was an investigation. We are not investigating. This is not an investigative hearing.
She knows the meaning of taking an oath. It's just to confirm for the committee that we can take to bank what she said, that she is not a member of a political party. We are not in any way trying her.
There's no provision whatsoever in our rule that asks you to put a nominee to go on oath. That's totally unacceptable. It's not even our rules. I mean, that makes us rather primitive.
The committee later resolved that she should not take the oath. Some senators were taken aback, especially after a court affidavit surfaced where Onochie categorically wrote a court stating that she is a member of the ruling APC.
When APC decided to do a proper registration of their members and to revalidate their membership, I did not take part in that exercise. So as I'm sitting down here, I am not a member of any political party in this country.
Despite the observations by senators, Onochie insisted that she stopped being a member of the ruling All Progressives Congress immediately after the 2019 elections. The committee then adjourned hearing to compile its report and present it to the Senate at plenary some other time. Onochie's nomination had sparked an outrage from the opposition and civil society groups, with PDP leaders staging a peaceful protest at the National Assembly complex to demand her rejection as INEC National Commissioner nominee. Sumner Sambu, Arise News.
Well, very quickly, I don't think any additional commentary is required from this end. Yemi Adamolekun, should Lauretta Onochie become an INEC commissioner or not? And is she in any way guilty of perjury, since there's a document out there in which she swore to an affidavit that she's a member of the APC, as alleged?
Indeed, I believe that she is, because not only is the document out there, there's also a tweet from 2020, if I'm not mistaken, where she talks about the fact that APC is having an INEC meeting, and that APC is going virtual or something to that effect. Basically, in my view, that affirms involvement, participation, membership, whichever English word we want to use, of the political party. And I think it's also quite interesting that there was a debate about her being put on oath, which I found very interesting. It's even if there's no rule about it, I don't remember the name of the senator, and I liked what he said. He said, look, let's put her on oath so that nobody can come back in the future and say she said or didn't say. And I think it's instructive that Lauretta, if I were her, I would have been like, you know what, no need to argue, put me on oath. But she couldn't have said that because she herself knew that was not correct. I just found the tweet, and it was, there's definitely an APC INEC meeting tomorrow. We are going through a growth process. Thank you, everyone. And it had a flag or the logo of APC. And this tweet was dated June 24, 2020. So if you are insisting that as of 2019, you stop being a member of a political party, why are you tweeting about a political party's National Executive Council's meeting and using the word we? So yeah, definitely. I think there's really not that much to be said. And I wonder, and I think again, this has some of the issues where we talk about this administration and perceptions of injustice and equity. Why are we insisting that Lauretta Onochie must be an INEC commissioner? Why is that so important to anybody? Okay, fine. She helped President Buhari become president. There's nothing else you can give her. Must it be INEC commissioner? But we insist, and we then spend a lot of time. We'll talk about it here. Civil society organizations are protesting. We're writing statements. Senate is spending time defending. I mean, we're just wasting time on top of a woman's nomination that completely makes no sense. Joblessness is worrying. It becomes just unnecessary work.
Yeah, Yemi, the senator asking that she should be placed on oath, that looked like Senator Yemi Bamidele representing Ekiti Central.
Yes, but the other senator who was in the blue agbada, he was the one saying,
Okay.
No, it wasn't. It was a northern senator.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, quickly, Dr. Nwaneri, your take on this.
So I'm wondering what the consequences are. I'm wondering what are options and what are the consequences. It's obvious that she's a member of the party. I mean, the lie is a very transparent lie. But my question is this: the question of democracy, the question of what the letters that. So let us see what the Senate does, right? Now, on the issue of the oath, one of the senators said that was deviating from due process. And much as I would have liked for them to resolve it, that somebody was aware and conscious enough to know that, no, you don't deviate from due process because of the circumstances, because there's such a thing as precedents. Tomorrow, somebody might ask for something else. But it's almost embarrassing, right? And so I agree with Yemi. Why is it so important, and why are we splitting so much ink on it? Now, the million-dollar question is, what will the committee recommend? And what will the Senate do in the light of all of this evidence? That is the question.
Maybe Prof will be able to help us
you see,
answer that question.
I do not have much of a problem with the denier. My problem is the system, the political system in Nigeria that enables it, that sustains it. You see, one English saying is that, show me your friend, and I will tell you whom you are. Onochie is simply telling us the personality, the integrity, the character of the sponsor. That's Muhammadu Buhari. And now, the dishonest attitude of Onochie is a reflection of what our president is doing. So in this case, the president has always told us that he appoints people he knows. The people he knows now happens to be the people promoting corruption institutionally. This is the problem.
Well, we'll take another break here on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, the conversation will continue. Don't go away. Stay with us. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, I have Professor Bola Akinterewa, Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, and Yemi Adamolekun. We take our next topic. President Muhammadu Buhari has said his administration is employing new tactics and deploying state powers to combat insecurity in the country. He also called on the West African countries to work together to tackle the security challenges facing the region. This was his message at the graduation of Senior Course 43 of the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji. Arise correspondent Nisi Gabriel reports.
126 Senior Course 43 officers graduating after 43 weeks of training and academic activities. They have been trained on tactical and operational level leadership with a focus on national security and multinational integration.
Because you have just completed has equipped you to cope with most challenges you are likely to face in your career. So as you go back to the field, you will be required to combine practical exigencies with the staff and leadership skills that you have acquired.
In his message, President Muhammadu Buhari said, despite the security challenges, Nigeria is committed to national security and development.
For the last 12 years have been particularly challenging for our nation, considering the plethora of the security threats that have besieged this country. Our government is poised to promote national security and development, as well as remain committed to promoting a vision of security, safety, just, peaceful, prosperous, and strong nation. Indeed, we shall be employing all elements of our national power in ensuring security, a just society, peaceful coexistence, national unity, and sustainable development, while promoting our good standing abroad.
He calls for more synergy among West African countries in combating insurgency, as there were 10 international senior officers among the graduates.
Combating these prevalent security threats effectively demands that African countries continue to work together at all levels, be it tactical, operational, or strategic. We shall now take, for instance, the collaboration of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, the Cameroon, the Niger Republic, and Chad in a multinational operation to combat Boko Haram insurgency in the Lake Chad region.
There's a challenge of stability and security in West Africa and the Sahel region. It's hoped that these senior officers will contribute to promoting the territorial integrity of their nations. Nisi Gabriel, Arise News, Kaduna.
Well, we discussed this earlier with our guest, Alhaji Nahaba, about new tactics, the deployment of state power in a more deliberate manner. And then the new leg of the story has to do with the fact that the president is calling for cooperation, regional cooperation, on the issue of insecurity within the region. Professor Akinterewa.
If President Muhammadu Buhari is asking for more synergy at the regional level. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But does he really, as an individual, as Muhammadu Buhari, does he believe in it? My hypothesis is that there's nothing to suggest that he strongly believes in it. The issue is this. Generally speaking, when you are talking about a new approach, approach is synonymous with what we call methodology in social sciences, where you carry out your analysis. Now, you either adopt defensive-aggressive or aggressive-defensive strategy in general international relations.
Or you adopt kinetic or non-kinetic architecture.
Yes. So you,
bring on the phrases, Prof.
You see, the issue
we
is
have
that
these phrases.
when you are talking about a defensive, aggressive strategy, 3 levels of analysis are involved: prevention, protection, and resilience. Now, you prevent when a situation of insecurity is yet to occur. All right? You can prevent. But the moment you are unable to prevent, you move to the level of protection, which requires defending or eliminating the threat completely. And if you are able to defend and eliminate the threat, the 3rd level resilience is how to bounce back, how to manage post-crisis issues. The issue now is that at the level of President Muhammadu Buhari, as I've said, that he doesn't have any political will, strongly having commitment to do so. Why? Empirical cases abound. For instance, he has been accused publicly that his military forces, over who is commander-in-chief, are hobnobbing with the Boko Haramis, that the military are aiding and abetting. He has not spoken a word. He is always aiding all these people that are fighting, threatening national security itself. So you don't just come into the open every time there is any fresh kidnapping. You ask them, security people, attack them and treat them in the language they understand. That's what he has always been telling us. If you now bring it to the level of West African region, that there should be synergy, etc. all along, the attitudinal disposition of other heads of state are completely different. So if you have commitment to fight, then you can be talking about new strategies.
Well,
please,
Yemi, I wanted to bring in Yemi. Will it be right to say that indeed President Buhari has been talking to bandits and those who want to sabotage Nigeria in the language that they will understand? Because Prof just made reference to that.
Well, I think they've been selective in their choice of language they will understand if we want to go that route. So if we consider, I'm selective in slightly illegal ways, I would say. So the narrative around Nnamdi Kanu now is that his British passport, I think the Guardian in the UK wrote an article, that his UK passport was found in Kenya. So there is speculation that he was Umaru decode back to Nigeria from Kenya. Then you have Sunday Igboho. Well, the DSS has a right to show up at his place, but again, because he wanted to do a Yoruba rally. But we are saying bandits are disgruntled Nigerians who are hungry, and that's why they are doing what they are doing. So I think for me, the larger issue about language they understand is the fact that it's quite selective. And also just not coherent, because even within our security services, there are disgruntled police officers, disgruntled army officers, and there's just not a clear narrative that Nigerian lives are valuable and we're doing all we can as a country to protect Nigeria. So as you said, Dr. Abati, we've been talking about insecurity now since this administration came in 2015. We're now in our 6th year, and we're still talking about the same things, going around circles. Change service chiefs, they did that. Then the service chiefs came and said, well, all the money you say is here, we can't find it. then one of them happened to die, and now we're still here. So it's just not a clarity of purpose and an honesty about what problems we're trying to solve and how.
Well, quickly, Dr. Nwaneri, you have something to add?
This is the first time that, maybe I haven't been paying attention. This is the first time I've had an allusion to borders. So I'm not going to go into the language and the discourse. I want to talk about borders and porosity of borders. I don't know if anybody has said decisively that we're going to seal off our borders and count how many people we are and make sure we can identify everybody. We have not done that. So I agree with Yemi that it seems as if the seriousness of intent of this administration can actually be questioned. I will not go as far as, yes, it is also possible to level accusations of discrimination and selective utterances, right? And one could also argue that what bothers me the most is lack of seriousness of intent, because, and then there's now the issue of even managing our space. I have a problem with that as well. How can we have massive tracts of space that are like black holes that you can just go in there and disappear? And we have not that multi-pronged approach that shows seriousness. This administration has not done that. That is very, very true.
Well, quickly, let's take our next story. Prof, this should be of interest to you. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has confirmed the index case of the Delta variant of the coronavirus in Nigeria. According to the NCDC, the variant was detected during routine tests for inbound travelers in Abuja. The development comes days after the World Health Organization expressed concern over the speedy spread in infection rates in Africa as countries battle a third wave of COVID-19. However, the NCDC says the federal government is stepping up efforts through collaboration with the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, the African Center for Genomics of Infectious Diseases, and other laboratories to carry out genomic sequencing to enable the detection of variants of concern and initiate response activities. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that a third wave of COVID-19 cases in Africa could get worse as new and faster spreading variants drive infections. Yemi, let me start this with you. Third wave in Africa, 16 countries, have an upsurge in infection rates. Out of these 16 countries, 10 of them have reported the Delta variant, which is the variant formerly known as the Indian variant. And of course, many of these African countries, they face challenges in terms of vaccine supply, access to vaccination, funding, money to get finances for a fresh supply of vaccines. African countries have less than 1% vaccination rate when you compare to the global total of 66 million vaccine doses that have been distributed. 50 million have been administered. And out of all of these, Africa can only boast of 1%. So we really face challenges. And here in Nigeria, we've been told that the Delta variant is here. What should the government do beyond genomic sequencing? What should we do as individuals? The NCDC is saying we should still strictly observe non-pharmaceutical interventions. Yemi Adamolekun, Delta variant in Nigeria.
Thank you. It's quite unfortunate because, Nigeria has struggled with there is a disease that's killing people, because we've been quite lucky in how we've responded to it and how, the number of deaths that we've had. Unfortunately, compared to like South Africa, for example, that got their COVAX allocation and they used all of it on first dose, and then took them a while to get the second dose, which made people, what's it called?
South Africa is administering Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the first country to do so.
To do so, right. So it's the then flip side for us. But actually, they did both, actually, because they did one that had a first.
No, they suspended the AstraZeneca and gave it out to the African Union.
That's what it was.
And then they went for Johnson & Johnson.
For Johnson & Johnson. Thank you very much. I knew they had one dose and second dose. But for Nigeria, we managed that process well. But I think there's just a fundamental bit that people are just not taking the disease seriously, that we just have to keep repeating what we need to do. One of the things that the Twitter ban has also done, unfortunately, was that NCDC was really fantastic on Twitter, particularly in sharing information and doing their daily updates so people are aware of what's happening. But right now, there's no presence on social media. So even from a population and educative point of view, a lot of people that would get their information from NCDC on social media are unable to do so because NCDC doesn't have a presence, thanks to the Nigerian government. Well, so that's also a challenge. Like, how do we then...
Let's take a short break at that point, and then when we return, the conversation will continue. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me in the studio Professor Bola Akinterewa, Dr. Andrew Duwan and Yemi Adamolekun. Sorry, Yemi, we had to take that break, but I'm back to you. If you may just conclude what you were saying.
Thank you. I was saying that NCDC not being on Twitter is a problem because they did an excellent job in educating Nigerians on that platform. So the flip side of what I guess the initial reports is the fact that we would have to continue to be almost vaccinated every year is what it's looking like. So they're talking about booster vaccinations, blah, 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 blah. What that means, as you said, for countries on the continent or country like Nigeria in terms of our penetration with vaccinations, really quite interesting. And also what that means for travel. So you are vaccinated, but you're required to take tests in Nigeria, test at the airport, test when you get to the other side, or quarantine. So travel just becomes really difficult. You're vaccinated prevent you from having to go through all these tests that are expensive. I mean, there's an allegation at the moment. I think it was the Secretary General of the African Free Trade Zone who was given a false positive result in Ghana. And then people are now saying that there's a whole racket going on at Ghana airport where they give you a positive test so they can quarantine you for 3 days, where you have to pay for a hotel in dollars, but everybody's just kind of hanging out. And so people are raising the point that if all of us are positive, should we not be in our rooms? Why are doctors who are only wearing masks, not full on PPP, just freely moving around? So it then begins to raise questions. I mean, Nigeria has had the same problems with testing. People who are required to test, who don't test or don't get called. So the economy we're creating around COVID, even beyond the fact that it's a dangerous disease and people are ill and dying, this whole narrative around fake test, what are we going to do with vaccination? So what's the point of being vaccinated if I still have to do 10 tests to leave my country? So questions we have to grapple with as we grapple with the disease.
Okay, Dr. Nwaneri, quickly, so that we can take one more topic.
My biggest challenge with the report we just got about this issue is that Nigeria has an adult population of 106 million. And even so, we've administered 3.5 million jabs. And remember that most people took 2. Well, people were supposed to take 12. So that means that we've really vaccinated less than 2 million people. I think my biggest challenge is vaccine refusal. There are people who outright say, no, I'm not interested. Now, let us see what happens. I hope that the news from the authorities is wrong, because if really we have the Delta variant approaching as a threat that is approaching the country, then we really are in trouble because we have only 2 million people vaccinated. There are people who keep denying that plus the first wave, second wave, third wave, that there's nothing like that. I don't know how we're going to deal. I hope the estimations are wrong. I really hope they're wrong, because I don't know what will happen if we go through what India went through. And that is a threat now. That is a threat that is looming. So I'm really concerned about that.
And that's why everyone has to be careful. including vaccine skeptics like Professor Akinterewa.
You
want to say
name
something, or I should go to South Africa quickly?
No, you see, let me put it interrogatively.
Yes.
The 2 million Nigerians.
I'm one of them.
That who have been vaccinated.
Yes, vaccinated.
Now,
1 and 2. Is
it now well established that you can no longer be infected? International comments have clearly shown that the mere fact that you have been vaccinated does not imply that you can still not acquire, that you will still not be infected. Okay. First point. The second point is that, internationally speaking, we have been told that all the efforts currently being made at the level of vaccination, they are experimental at best.
Well, let's take our final topic, and Prof, I will come back to you. This is from South Africa. Former South African President Jacob Zuma has turned himself into the police to begin 15 months in jail for contempt of court. A police spokesperson has confirmed that Zuma is in custody in compliance with the Constitutional Court judgment. Zuma was admitted to Escort Correctional Center, about 175 kilometers from his rural homestead in eastern South Africa. The court gave Zuma a 15-month jail term last week for defying an instruction to give evidence at an inquiry into corruption during his 9 years in power until 2018. Meanwhile, businesses in South Africa are worried protests against the jailing of former President Jacob Zuma may turn violent. Hundreds of people, angered by Zuma's imprisonment, have burned trucks, commercial property, and blocked major roads in KwaZulu-Natal province. That's President Zuma's province, but the violence is spreading. M2 highway in Johannesburg was blocked this morning. There have also been protests in Gauteng and in other parts of South Africa. But Prof, what does this mean for democracy, for the rule of law, for persons in relation to the state and the rule of law?
If you are asking for democratic rule, you see, is what you need to also comply with. The imprisonment is not yet even at the level of the allegations brought against him. The issue now is contempt of court. And please, whether you are Zuma, whether you are king, whether you are president, please, you cannot be placed above law. All those who are protesting in his favor, they should be so arrested too, and let the law be brought to their level. It's as simple as that, so that other African leaders can learn a lesson. It is simply because here in Nigeria, for instance, that our president believes that national security interests overrides rule of law. No. Security protection should be guided by rule of law. And that is the issue. For as long as we do not put rule of law at the crescendo on the continuum of political governance, we are all in trouble.
Well, Yemi, let me come back to you. We have just a minute to go. Jacob Zuma and the rule of law in South Africa. Okay, Dr. Wanere.
So I agree with Prof completely. Symbolically, the content we might never know, because politicians sometimes it can be economical with the truth. And might this be a strategy to avoid, I'd rather go to jail for 15 months than to naked everybody that was involved, because obviously money changed hands. But symbolically, it is impressive that a former president actually hands himself over. I do not understand the logic of the protest, though, because he did voluntarily surrender, right? And is willing to go to jail for 15 months. So that is really interesting.
For cover up.
It's right. The whole thing smells funny to me.
I think it's a landmark moment in South Africa's democracy. It shows that the judiciary, in a sense, is the guardian of the democratic process, and that nobody is above the rule of law, despite the fact that President Zuma and his supporters are insisting that this is a political conspiracy of the highest order. But the point, of course, is that a court order has been enforced, and himself has had to abide by it. Although his lawyers have gone back to court to see how the situation can be reversed.
wriggle out of it.
So thank you very much.
Can be reduced to 3 months.
You've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again.